Welcome back, folks. This is lesson 3 of my Python tutorial, and today we're going to look at lists and loops. So loops are something that's very common in most programming languages and allow you to repeat tasks or iterate tasks. So in our example here, we're just going to get straight in. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to print numbers such as I'm doing above. And I wanted to go all the way up to 10. So that's just going to print 1 to 5 down here in the shell. And you'll see that this very quickly becomes quite boring. And if I wanted to go all the way up to 99, I'm going to be there forever, doing this sort of thing. So there must be another way, and there is another way, and that's by using a loop. So there are two kinds of loops in Python: for loops and while loops. And we're going to first take a look at while loops, which are the simpler of the two. So if we grab a number from the user, and all we're going to do is print out 1 up to the number that's entered by the user. So if we say enter a number, again, input you'll have covered in lesson 1. We're going to treat that as a number, so at the moment n, the variable, is a string, so we'll just do a conversion, call it nint. So what we're doing there, you may recall from the last lesson, we're just going to convert n into an integer and we'll store that in the variable called nint. We'll introduce a new variable called I, which will start from 1. Then we'll do our loop and we'll say while I, the value of I, is less than nint, i.e. the number that was entered by the user. Don't forget your semicolons. Then we'll print I. I will be an integer, so we should convert that to a string, which print will like. So this line will keep repeating until this condition is no longer true, and what we need to do is add 1 to I each time we go around that loop. So we're going to, first time in, we'll print 1, then we'll add 1 to I, we'll go back round, this condition will be checked, is I still less than nint, and say the user's entered something like 10, it will be, so we'll print the number 2, and then we'll add 1 to I again, it will be 3, and we'll print the number 3, and so on. So we'll run that just to check it works. So we'll enter a number and we'll do 10. And there, as you can see in the shell at the bottom, we've printed out the numbers from 1. It actually goes up to 9 because of the less than there. If we wanted to go all the way up to 10, we could do less than or equal to. We rerun that again. Sometimes I find with Thonny that it's quite slow to run programs. I get this delay that I've got now, and I generally just fix that by coming out of Thonny and going back in, which I may do in a moment actually, because it drives me mad. So enter a number 10, and there you can see we print 1 to 10. Nice and simple. While I'm here, this line, there is an alternative syntax for that. I'll comment out that line. And this comes from the C programming language. And instead of saying I equals I plus 1, we can just say I plus equals 1. Exactly the same thing. It's just a shorthand. And you can do similarly with minus equals, which will subtract. Just a little trick there. So that's while loops. Straightforward. We can do things within them. There is a break, which will break out of a loop. So we could do something like if I equals 5, and break out of the loop. So what will happen is I will be checked each time. If it gets to the value of 5, we'll just break out the loop and it will stop. It's a bit nonsensical in our example, but there are times when you need to break out of loops. You'll see there we've gone up to 4, so this would have been incremented from 4 up to 5. It's done the check and it's broken out of the loop. So just worth remembering. And there is another thing we can use within a loop called continue. That's another key word. So where we could just do and what that will do is just allow the loop to continue. We can catch a number within the loop or an event within the loop, and we can just say continue. So just be aware of that. There are times I've used it in the past. So the other kind of loop, we'll just get rid of that, is a for loop. So for I in, and for loops are a lot more powerful than while loops, and they do a lot more. But we'll do a simple example. I'll get rid of this for the moment. So you'll see we're saying let I take a value of a range value between 1 and 5. And then again we'll go around the loop and we'll print the value of I. And you'll see there that's done at the bottom. You'll notice it's not inclusive, so it started from 1 and it went up to 4. So it didn't include the value 5. So obviously if we wanted to go all the way up to 5, we'd have to make that range 6. And that would give us 1 to 5. So for loops will actually iterate through any object or list is probably a better term for that. And I mentioned this lesson was all about lists and loops. So lists are essentially what other languages might call an array. So if we can have a list of values and we can store them in a variable, a single variable, which becomes a list. And if you've used arrays in other languages, then you'll know what I mean, because they are very similar. So if we get, say, 3 colours, I'm just going to comment out those lines for a second. So my list now contains this set of values: red, blue, green. Yep, see 3 colours. And if I want to refer to one of those, I use what's called an index. So I can say something like index, print my list 1, so with an index of 1. And I'm going to run that. You'll be expecting to see red, and what you actually see printed is blue. There we go. And the reason for that is because this index value in the list always starts from 0. So here the index for red is 0, the index for blue is 1, and the index for green is 2. Okay, so that's an array or a list. Quite simple, quite useful if you're looping through things like days of the week and you want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, colours, various other things you may want to do. Lists can be extremely useful. In our, again, I'll just comment that out. So going back to our for loop, in Python it makes it really easy then to iterate through our lists. So we can do things like for I in my list, I'm not going to use I. So what we're asking Python to do is to iterate through everything in our list and print the value of that item within the list. There you go, red, blue, green. Notice that I didn't have to do this syntax. I didn't have to refer to mylist 1, 2 and 3. I could have done that. I could have used a while loop, but Python makes it easy to do things like that. So the for loop is aware that mylist is in fact a list, and it's happy to treat each element individually and print them. There are lots of things that are lists in by default. So a string is in fact already a list. And again, within a for loop, we can actually iterate through my string, and this will have the effect of treating each character separately, as we will see. And I'll just get rid of that and that. What this should do is print out each individual character of Hello World one at a time, which it does down there, as can be seen. Okay, so again, just be aware of this. Quite powerful for loops, and I'd encourage you to read a bit more about for loops. If you want some simple iteration as you're beginners, I'd stick with the while loop. You know where you are. It's very straightforward. And once again, I'd ask you to subscribe if you would, and also keep an eye on my videos, which will be coming out every few days is my plan. And try this yourselves. You know, as I've always said, there's no way to learn programming. There's no magic trick. You just have to do it. You can watch me until you go blue in the face, but you're not going to learn unless you try things yourself. So I'd encourage you, go away, have a play, do a simple example with a while loop and a for loop. Have a play with lists, and by all means read some more. There's lots of other videos and websites that'll explain a bit more about Python lists, but I'm going to leave that there for now, and I hope you've enjoyed that simple little lesson, and I'll catch you all soon. Thanks.